Hello everyone, welcome to today's session on contract management within Sage Intacct, specifically referring to SaaS companies. As a business, Leverage Technologies has a number of clients and some 600 contracts for those various clients. They range from full price, discounted, renewals, with support, without support, implementations, every single gamut you can think of, we already do, and internally we use Sage Intacct to help manage all of that functionality. I'd like to show you how we use some of that today, and thank you for your time. I'm starting with the dashboard in Sage Intacct. This is how I've set it up to sign in, and you'll see here that I'm using it from a browser. I happen to be using it on Microsoft Edge, but it could be on Chrome, it could be on Safari, on a MacBook, entirely up to you where you utilize the application. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the financials portion. If you want information on that, I recommend watching the financial services recording that we did recently also, which will take you into more detail about the financial capabilities of Sage Intacct. Today I'm going to concentrate on the contracts module as a portion thereof. So you can see by this dashboard that I'm using that I'm having a look at my committed monthly recurring revenue. So I'm able to keep an eye on what's happening on a quarter-to-date basis, what my anticipated are, what my actuals are, what my trending is, what my growth showing is, that it's going up in all the right directions, seeing how it keeps building over a month-by-month basis. A lot of information on a dashboard where I'm able to specify for a date range. In this case, I'm using a sample data set, so 2019, and I can also specify if I'm looking for a specific location, a group. So my sample data is multinational, so I have Australian companies, English companies, you name it, I've got one of everything, as it were, and I also have groups of companies. So I am able to turn around and say I want to look at a particular group in there. I'm looking at this from in this instance, I'm looking at it from what's called a top level. Sage Intacct is a multi-entity solution. And you can see here, if I scroll down to the all entities, I have some US companies, Canadian, UK, a whole heap of Australian companies, of course. And the data I'm looking at here is for the business as a whole. If I was to switch that across to looking at my Australian companies, then you'll see the data set is much less and all of the numbers have been changed. Now, I'm able to see that because I'm filtering the dashboard based on a number of filters up the top here. If I go into the detail behind here, I'm actually looking at this data based on a filter set. This filter is based on the departments, locations, etc. These are dimensions, and I'll explain them in a second, for Sage Intacct. So every time we do a transaction, we can append one or more dimensions to it. If I was to add customer to this particular dashboard, then whilst I'm viewing all of my Australian, I can actually specify I want to see it for all customers, and it will show me the data set for the business. But I can turn around and say, look, I want to see what's the details for, say, my Alinta gas company, and it will bring me down to drilling into the actual data specific to that company. Now, it might be a company, it might be a group of companies. You can see I've done regions here, I've done different customer types, and then I have all of the individual customers that I may have contracts for. So you're very easily able to slice and dice all of the information found on the data, on the dashboard. I'm doing that by having a look at the dimensions that exist within Sage Intacct. So within Sage Intacct, you have your entity or location, you have departments, class, which is what we call a catch-all. In this case, you have your contracts, you might have your customer, your supplier, your employee, and you can have user-defined fields. What that does is as you use it, you can have a very straightforward chart of accounts. And instead of having to have a lots of lines in your chart for all of the different variables, let's say equipment, for example, you can go in and you have equipment and then you do any transaction that applies to equipment or a contract, in this instance, say, and you append the dimensions to the transaction. So what we used to do is we would have the account and then we would have maybe a location, a department, project or contract, and you ended up with 75 different account code combinations. Sage Intacct says keep one, just keep the primary account and then add all of the other segments to it by using the dimension analysis. So that's what I'm looking at when I say, when I look in here at the actual data and I put my filters on and I say, well, which dimensions am I trying to look at or am I appending when I do my transactions? So my dashboard up here, my favorites, my executive dashboard, and bring in all of the information about the business. I'll come back to dashboards at the very end, but let's go into actual contracts themselves and start to see, well, where's the data around the customer contracts? So into contracts and into looking at the actual contracts that are in here at the moment. Now, these are the contracts set up in my sample data set. You'll notice that I have the display hierarchy ticked. This is because contracts can be recurring, lines can be recurring, contracts can be recurring. And then we end up with, and you'll see here, for example, this ABB grain one, it was started in 2017 to the calendar year of 2017. And then it was renewed for 2018, 2019, 2020, etc., right through to it's a 6 or 8 year contract. And so the hierarchy allows me to see that each of these is a sub-line of the top level. So you can actually see where it's up to. Has it been renewed? Is it in progress? What currency it is in? What's the pricing? What's been invoiced? And so you can see the data around the contract itself. Now, if I drill into one of these contracts, I'll use my Olympic gas that I just used a second ago. From within here, I'm able to see exactly what's happening with this particular annual contract in this case. So it's an in-progress contract. The total value of the contract for this year is 56,452. We've billed that and they've paid most of it. There may have been a reason, we don't know why. Just off this top of my head, I don't know why, but there is $202 still outstanding. I have the ability to create contracts manually by typing it in. I can duplicate a contract to save me having to type everything. It will just copy it for me. I can bring the data in from an Excel spreadsheet. I could use an integration to a CRM, for example, like Salesforce. I could bring it in through an API. I'm going to look at it all from a manual perspective today and just show you the detail. You can specify different contract types. Now, wherever I have a drop down, that ends up showing me add, view and find. It means it's a table that I can edit. So no problem at all to go in and edit and create additional contract types so that it knows what to do with it. It has a start and end date, specifics on when we bill it. What's the pricing come from? It's come from my base price list. It could come from usage pricing. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then you can have fair value where you might do a bundle price. So you could have 3, 5, 10 lines in the contract, but you do a price based on the overall contract as opposed to the value for each line of the contract. Then you can append your dimensions that I was just talking about. So in this case, I've simply said it's for an entity and it's for a department. I haven't specified any of the other functions. Sorry, I've put in a small business one there. And then I've identified for this contract, for this customer, what are the contract lines that we are going to be invoicing them on. Now, this is, as you wouldn't be at all surprised, this is a subscription to the software, and then it is a number of user licenses that are going to access the software and our top level support. Okay, so looking at that, each of those is a fixed price function. So let's go in and have a look at what's in behind each of those lines. I'll go to full screen while it loads that. And you'll spot that this particular line, so every line can have its own ending date. You might want to give them just 3 months of free service. You might want to do a price for the implementation that you know you're going to finish within a 6-month period, for example. Does it renew? Yes or no? So this is not the contract, this is the contract line, okay? And in this case, it's a fixed price, but it could be quantity based, it could be project time and project materials. Is it using a one-time invoice? Are we including it with every invoice? How is that calculated? And in this case, it is a $50,000 but it's been discounted by 3%. Therefore, the actual amount is $48,000, which is what I'm going to be billing them on. Because it is a one-time, there is no schedule to show the billing. But if it was something that I billed on a 3-monthly, 6-monthly, monthly basis, then there will be a schedule here as well. Then I can turn around and do a schedule for how I recognize the revenue. Now I've billed them $48,000 perpetual license, or for the first 12 months, depending on how we're going to do it. And that it needs to be distributed from a revenue recognition perspective over those 12 months. And we're using a template that says daily. So let's have a look at the schedule that's going to generate. Now the daily schedule says there are 30 days in November, there are 31 days in October, there are 28 days, 29 days in February. Bill according to the number of days and spread out. So there's one charge, but it's going to vary based on the 31-day months, the 30-day months, and the 28, 29-day months. In this case, it was a 29 because it was 2020. And so these are the billings that it's going to do in order to generate the total price that we're going to bill them. If it is a multi-currency transaction, then you'll see there's also the possibility of doing daily rates for the actual billing process. When we look at the quantities, they might, in this particular case, it's a fixed amount based on a 1 times that value, but it may have been 8 times a product, it might have been usage based. So one of the options that you have in there is you have price lists in the background, and those price lists might specify how we do usage pricing, because the capability exists within the system. Let me just go into the help in a second here. That you can do various pricing types. Yeah, it might just be a fixed price, one off. It might be user based. It might be another function that you're trying to sell them that is based on tiered pricing. So we have a situation with tiered pricing, for example, where there's examples within the help I'm looking at here, where the first tier is $10 per, and then once you reach 4, it's $9.50. Once you reach 8, it's $9. Normal steps. But what this is doing is it's saying the first 3 are $10 each. If you then add an additional 4, the first 3 are still $10. The second lot are $9.50, or the first 3 are $10, the second ones are $9.50, the fourth ones are $9. So we're doing tiered pricing throughout there. You could just do standard pricing. If you buy 3, it's $10 each. If you buy 7, it's $9.50 each. And that goes from the beginning, from 0 up, or 1 up. So all of the way through this capability to work out, we're going to do various types of pricing. It could be how many used in a month. So I'm charging $16.50 a month based on the active users. And once I reach 20, it drops to $16 a month based on the active users. And so all the way through, it's doing the calculations. So very, very capable of doing billings of all sorts that might be for a subscription, for the number of users, for the usage that's used. It might be you might be charging them for gigabytes used, for example, and you can have all of those functions from within the contract. So I'll cancel that line. You'll see that the other 2 lines are identical in that respect, fixed price and all of the way through. You can additionally, not that common in Australia, but you can additionally add an expense line that you have attributed to winning this contract or gaining this contract. Let me just go to the help here. All right, so it's the cost incurred to obtain or fulfill the contract. So these are the costs to your business, so that you can keep an eye on how that goes as well. And sometimes you might be able to bill it, other times it's a cost we all have to absorb. Looking further at what else is in the actual contract, so that's the contract itself plus the lines that we're billing, how we're billing them, and any expenses that we want to keep an eye on. Then we can specify whether this is a renewing contract. And if it is, does it have a template? So in my case, I've got 60 days with no increase. I've got 60 days plus a 5% increase. It's 12 months, and I can give them a renewal invoice in advance. And here I can see when the contract began and when it's going to finish. You'll notice that I've used a termed contract here. That is because this one was for 3 years. We also have the capability of what we call an evergreen contract that will not run out until you stop it. Okay, so that enables you to just switch it on. Quite often this is used for something like support. So you might do a contract for support that is separate to the contract for the license. Nowadays, of course, with SaaS, we're usually wanting the client to stay on the contract, but it may still have an initial period that we need to do as a termed contract. From here, I can also see all of my journal balances, and I can see what has been invoiced, what has not been invoiced, what has been paid, what my deferred revenue is, what my sales values are, what my totals are, what my accounts receivable numbers are, any deferred expenses or recognized expenses, all of the information around when I build it, what I build, how I deferred it, where I'm sitting at with that particular contract at any given time. I can see all of the transactions that may have occurred on this particular contract. I can have a look at my compliance. Some of our customers, it's very important that they go through a series of checklists, and you can define the checklist, you can add your notes, and you can specify who needs to sign things off, who signed it off, when they signed it off, and keep a track of all of the compliance that's involved. And you can see your monthly recurring revenue. So what will be the money that we're expecting to bring in on a monthly basis? That is going to go onto your dashboard for you. Okay. Once you've set up your contract, put all your contract lines and expense lines in, any usage that you want, then you can start doing your invoice generation. And so you can go into the generate invoices option. You can specify the date range that you want. You have a number of filters in the background. So I'm just doing invoicing by contract, for example, but I can specify dates. I can specify contract types. I can put which transactions I want to include. Don't want to show the expenses, for example. And I can even use exception filters to say these are the contracts that I want. And then before I do the actual release of those invoices, I can generate a preview of them, which is just going to go through and have a look at everything that it believes that I should bill for the month. And so down the bottom here, this says, right, for, what did it tell me? 20 customers, 20 invoices, $1.5 million at this particular point. And so I can see all of those, and from there I can generate the invoices, and it will release those invoices and dispatch them to the customer. From there, at any point, I can come back in and see the invoice runs that were made and see all of the, view the actual run, can see when it was, what it was a bill for, and the actual invoice that it generated from within the system. Just quickly open an invoice for you there. And so again, you can see the posting details, the history of it, the payments that have been made around that particular one, all of the information. I can print that actual invoice out, and we supply you a default invoice layout, which you can then raise your own layout with us. But as you can see here, the main module, the license, five of those, one of the supports, one of the main, and therefore plus my GST, total cost to you, Mr. Customer. So all of that information is available to you within the actual application. Now, logically, the other thing that to me is left, I've raised my contracts, I've filled it all in, done everything I need, I've done my billing, now I want to see some reports. And we have a plethora of reports specifically for the contract ledger. And as you can see, the details, what my renewals are, my sub-ledger, my schedules, my forecasts. A couple that I've preloaded for you here might be this one where I've got my contract forecast, so I can see what I'm forecast for my billing, what I'm forecasting for my payments, my revenue, and then the expenses that I've incurred in doing those transactions. So all the way through here, I'm able to see for February, March, April, May, based on the date that I ran this at, all of the billings that I'm expecting to incur for this particular area. We also have available to you an interactive Visual Explorer. This is an additional cost item, and that will allow you to do a quite detailed and graphic analysis of the contracts. And in this case, I can run my contracts over time. I can have a look at the revenues. And you can see here what by billing, by status, what's been posted, what's unposted, by customer rep, by billing method. All of these are filters and dashboard widgets that you can add to based on all of the actual measures and attributes of the application. So you can add and slice and dice a lot of information through this particular. We also have what's called an interactive custom report writer. And so we're able to generate specific reports. So you have out-of-the-box reports, you have custom report writer capability available to you as an additional module, and you have the interactive Visual Explorer as an additional module as well. But this allows us to identify, by entity, the contract details. As you can see, we can drill into the contract, we can drill into the customer, we can see the billings that are occurring, and if I go through here looking at my ABB grain one, for example, you can see what's going to be my recurring billings over the next few months that have not yet been billed. So all the way through we're able to keep an eye on how much we've recognised, what's not yet recognised, what's deferred revenue, and then what we expect to bring in to the detail. Last but not least, another metric that I talked about in a second ago, last dashboard, and this is a SaaS metrics capability. Now this one is also an optional extra, but this is this takes care of a number of the reports that we find our SaaS customers do. So most of them go, that's a no-brainer. Let's have that. So we can get a look at and I'm looking at the growth version here. There's growth, there's revenue, there's uplift, and so on. So I'm looking at my total committed monthly revenue, what my committed annual revenue is. I can see what my average new deal, my net growth. I can have my rule of 40. It should always be above 40, so we're doing okay at 190%. You can see what our committed monthly revenue per customer is, how many customers, and graph it, check the trending of it, seeing how we're actually tracking with all of the metrics around the nature of the business. So a quick look at what's in a contract, what sort of invoicing we can do, what sort of reporting we can do around it. So I'd like to say thank you for your time today. If you'd like more information on Intacct for SaaS companies using contract management, please reach out and we'd be happy to schedule a personal meeting for you. Until then, I'm Andrew Casey. Thank you and have a good day.